Tozer family and friends, here we are at the river, Memorial Day 2012. Here with Mom, Megan, Annette, Colleen, and Wyatt.
And Justin.
And Justin, excuse me. Sorry I got a little bit emotional there. We're going to take a little trip today. I discovered something I think you'll find this amazing.
You find it amazing?
Come with me on a trip through Dad's career. Here we go. What I discovered was Dad's Air Force flight records. These are official Air Force flight records indicating the aircrafts, the amount of time, where he flew from, and the detailed information on anything that took place during these flights. Quite amazing here. We're talking tens of thousands of hours in military aircraft flying. These are official records. Okay, let's take a little trip and start out. I had to make some assumptions here, so you'll have to bear with me. I believe the first plane that Dad flew was the L-5. It's known as the Cessna by many. This particular picture shows the first cab insignia. This was called the Bird Dog during the Vietnam War and was used as a spotter aircraft to spot enemy positions. I believe this was Dad's first aircraft that he learned to fly in. In flight school, Dad took many trainers. Right here you'll see the AT-6. This was one of the World War II trainer aircraft. The instructor pilot was in the back of the plane and Dad was sitting in the front. This is where he learned his first flight techniques. Next is the BT-13B. As you can see, this aircraft is specifically designed for training pilots in flight techniques, landing and takeoff, and such as that. Dad flew many of the AT-6s, the Cs, the Bs, and the Gs. Here also is another one, the T-6G. Smaller picture, but very similar aircraft. Also have right here is the T-6D, another trainer aircraft that Dad trained in several locations before actually flying different assorted aircraft. Dad also flew the UC-78, which is a light transport aircraft, twin engine, radial design. He also flew the C-45B, which is also another utilitarian aircraft, radial engine, small version, which led to the world famous C-47 that Dad flew also, which is world renowned, World War II, even into the Vietnam War. As Dad advanced through his training, he moved into more complicated aircraft. Here is the P-39. This was the early version runner-up going towards the P-51 and the F-51, which we'll cover a little bit later. Dad also flew the P-47 Thunderbird. That was a radial engine fighter World War II version. A very sophisticated aircraft for its time, very well known for its durability and its power in a dive. The next aircraft Dad flew was the one everybody knows. It's the P-51. Any of you historian buffs will know that the History Channel recently had a documentary on the top 10 fighters of all time. And top of the list, number 1, P-51. Dad also flew the F-51. The F-51 was a souped-up version of the P-51, which was used in the Korean War. This was a souped-up version, to try to compete with the MiGs that were established in the Korean War. Dad also flew the B-24 bomber. This is a 4-engine heavy bomber, long range. Dad had numerous hours where I had the B-24. Dad also flew the B-25. This was a medium range bomber, twin engine, and I recall this aircraft and a B-17 were restored and flew into Greenville Airport, where Dad, I, and Ryan were able to climb on these aircraft, and Dad explained where he sat and what he operated. You all remember he wore his watch with the watch part in so it wouldn't hook up on any of his components on the flights. Dad also flew the B-29 bomber, heavy long-range bomber. Dad didn't do any bombing with this, but I do recall that this was an aircraft that was used to tow targets to let the fighter pilots practice hitting targets at high altitude. And I remember Dad indicated some of the guys didn't shoot that good, and they took numerous rounds on these aircraft that were shooting at targets. Then Dad flew the P-61, known as the Black Widow. This is the first aircraft, came out in 1944, had its own radar system, and was designed to fight at night and attack fighters. It was deadly to the German Air Force. Its radar was able to pick up aircraft far away and engage them. It had 20mm cannons and quad 50 caliber machine guns. It's called the Black Widow. Dad also flew the XP-59. This aircraft, as you see, is hanging in the Smithsonian. This was the first Air Force jet that was produced. It was top secret. It started its process in 1941, and the first flyable versions came out in 1943 and 1945. And Dad's records right here that we saw earlier indicates that he did in fact fly this aircraft, the first jet designed by the United States Air Force. Pretty amazing. Dad also flew the T-33. This was the first jet fighter trainer. This was the first one that they designed to teach pilots how to fly jets. You'll see the instructor in the back seat and the student pilot in the front seat. Dad's records clearly show that he studied the T-43 to fly jets. Dad flew the P-80 Shooting Star. This was the very first jet fighter the United States Army Air Corps had, and Dad flew this aircraft, the P-80. Dad also flew the F-86 Super Sabre. This was the first very successful jet fighter used in the Korean War to counter the Russian MiGs that first came out. The most amazing discovery of this journey is that Dad flew the YB-35. This is known as the Flying Wing. Had 4 engines, twin propeller on both engines. You notice the pilot was in the front area right here. It was designed in 1942. There was 13 of them made. It was designed for long-range bombing of Germany from the United States. They thought that England could possibly fall and they would have to bomb from long range. At the time, the controls were cable and hydraulics. Because it did not have a rudder, it was very unstable in flight and was determined to not be able to be used effectively in bombing runs. This aircraft was made by Northrop. Northrop just recently introduced the B-2 bomber. This is the exact configuration of the B-2 bomber. The wingspans are the same length, but because of fly-by-wire controls that are now available in aircraft, they were able to get this to smooth out so they could use it. So Dad flew the pre-seed to the B-2 bomber. And here, an amazing picture. Here's Dad in front of a flying wing. Third from the left. Is that not amazing? That's Dad. Thank you. Could be with us.